Welcome back to Boca Raton. This video, we're going to go over the top 3 things that you must consider even before looking at a house here in Boca Raton. What are the top 3 things that you must decide now before you start looking on Zillow, before you start looking at different areas or neighborhoods that you must consider before moving down here to this beautiful city of Boca Raton? All right, so the number one deal breaker that you, your partner, your family must talk about before you decide to even start looking at houses here in Boca Raton, it's going to be about the status of the HOA. Are you and your family, are you okay? Are you pro HOA? Are you anti HOA? Many times this is a hot topic that comes up with a lot of couples, a lot of families, of how do they actually feel about joining an HOA, especially these gated communities. A lot of these HOA communities that you're going to find here in Boca Raton or in Florida in general offer a lot of pros and cons to them. Now, some of the pros for the HOA neighborhoods here in Boca Raton is, for one, it's got to be the added sense of security for you and your family. As you can see in the world today, there's a lot of hate, there's a lot of discrimination, and there's a lot of craziness going on. And the HOAs and a lot of these gated communities add a layer of security for you and your family. A lot of these gated communities have an armed guard present. They have security. A lot of people, Boca Raton is going to be another property for them. It's going to be another location that they live here partly and not year round. So a gated community adds an extra level of security to help protect their properties when they're not around Boca Raton. Say for the summer months, they're out. Boca Raton gets really hot and people go back to either, say, Canada, the Northeast, or Europe. Another major pro of these gated communities and HOA communities has got to be the amenities. Even though it's not gated, there's a lot of them that have a very nice clubhouse, a pool, tennis courts, pickleball courts, and other things that active family members or people love to do, and it lets you engage with your other neighbors. And because of that engagement, it adds a whole nother sense of building a community within its actual gated or within the neighborhood itself. Other people greatly fear that they're going to move into a neighborhood and all of a sudden their neighbor is going to put penguin statues on their front yard and paint their house bright purple or cheetah print. Well, in a lot of these HOA neighborhoods, they're not going to allow that type of behavior. So you know when you buy into an HOA neighborhood, you're getting a sense of consistency that how you bought it is how it's going to be maintained moving forward. Also in Boca Raton, people actually love to ask this too, like what neighborhood you live in, what community clubs or country clubs you're a part of, what your kids do, what schools your kids go to school to. So your neighborhood, a lot of the HOA neighborhoods have a little bit more sense of prestige that comes along with them, and that's going to affect like the people who are around you, who associate with you. So a lot of people like these certain type of neighborhoods. Now some of the HOAs aren't too bad. The HOA fees are very little, such as New Foresta and all those neighborhoods kind of right there on St. Andrews. Most of the HOA fees go to keep the common areas well trimmed, manicured, and keep the entrance updated. Other ones have very strong HOAs and very strong country clubs as well that are very exclusive and very hard to get into. Even though you're a paying member, you could pay, hundreds of thousands of dollars wanting to join a particular country club, such as Woodfield Country Club, but there's no more memberships available. It's very exclusive, and all the families that I know who live in there actually enjoy living in there. The kids love the arcade area, they love the playgrounds, the pools, the activities, and they feel like they get their money's worth with their HOA and what it brings. And it brings people together who have very common interests, similar styles of lifestyles, and it's much easier to network and meet new people, especially if you're moving down here. A place like Woodfield, it's very well secure, so if you're worried about any type of discrimination or things going on, they're very diverse in that neighborhood. And I haven't heard personally anybody having issues with that neighborhood, but we're going to talk about the neighborhoods I have heard. Now let's get to the cons of these HOAs, just so you're aware. So HOAs, you have absolutely no control over the cost and the increase unless you're on that board or you're a voting member. Sometimes these HOAs increase drastically throughout the years. So if you've looked on the news lately, there's some HOAs in the past few years have went up by over 500%. So even though a lot of these HOA yearly dues aren't a lot of money for some people just enjoy controlling costs and keeping accountability of where the money is going. And some of these HOAs are very poorly managed, and they do stuff that you have absolutely no interest in funding or maintaining, and they put rules that you have no control of and increase costs. Again, you have no control of these HOA costs that can go up by 500% within a few years. Another con is that a lot of these HOAs don't allow full independence of the property. So if you're somebody like me that loves to garden or plant nice tropical palm trees because you finally moved to South Florida, you were very excited, you finally get to have a very tropical landscape in your backyard. However, the HOA could tell you, you're not allowed to plant fruit trees. You're not allowed to plant this particular palm tree. If you want this palm tree right here, you may not be able to plant it in your yard. Some HOAs control what you can even do in your backyard. If you want to add a pool, some won't even allow you to add a fence in your backyard because they want to keep the entire neighborhood open for every member of the neighborhood. Some people enjoy renting out their property when they're not here. So some people like to rent out during the summer, but some of these HOAs do not allow rentals within, say, the first year or two. Some don't even allow rentals at all. And I got some horror stories to share with you about people who've had bad experiences with HOAs. So one of the bad experiences with HOAs is this lady who actually lives in New York. She lives in her house part-time. Apparently, she has over $10,000 of unpaid HOA dues, and her HOA is foreclosing on her, making it a public record, putting her name everywhere out there. It's all public that they're going to foreclose on her because she has over $10,000 of unpaid HOA dues. Now, have you heard the latest story about some attorneys are going in, they're paying off those dues, and they actually get rights to possibly buy your house and take it over for a set price from the HOA, and you have no say in this. So again, you are losing control of your property, and these people are able to foreclose on you quicker than your own mortgage. Now, your HOA is supposed to be there to protect you and the community and keep you safe. However, your HOA could actually turn on you and make things much worse. This just was saw during the COVID pandemic. There was an incident in a condo association here in Boca Raton in the downtown area. What they did, they discovered, probably because, everybody in your community likes to talk sometimes, they found out that a couple who lives in this condo tested positive for COVID. Now, this was a big scandal in the area. I don't know if the lawsuit's still going on. I'll put the article right here. But what the HOA decided to do was deactivate their key fobs without their permission to lock them into their room for at least a week. And they told them that if they left their room, they were going to call the cops on the couple who was living in there. They were held hostage by their own HOA that they paid HOA dues to. And again, the HOA itself wasn't there to protect the people that it should have. It actually made matters worse. And again, there's other incidents of HOA board members acting in a discriminatory way towards different groups of people and going against groups of people actively by unfairly fining them and putting violations on these groups of people because of their race, ethnicity, or other issues, such as the one in Loggers Run that apparently it's public record that they're in the middle of a lawsuit for being anti-Semitic. So that's something else to consider as well. The HOA could possibly, nitpick on you. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that, they have a hard time making friends because of their personality. They have a very A-type personality, or they like to, take charge of things, and they may not be the friendliest person. When your community ends up not liking you, they can come after you unfairly, unjustly, and there's nothing you can do because remember, your HOA can actually foreclose on you quicker than your mortgage. Number 2 consideration, if you're planning on moving here to the beautiful city of Boca Raton, you need to talk with your family about, are you okay living in a flood zone? So you may not think about this now, but everywhere in Florida is technically in some type of FEMA flood zone risk. So before you start searching for the house, you find this perfect house. It's right there on the canal. You can take your boat out. You need to make a decision before you start this house hunting. Are you okay with your home being in a flood zone? And if so, what type of flood zone are you okay with? Are you okay with X? Because most places would be X. That would be great. I'll put the flood map right here. As you can tell, a lot of places next to bodies of water, but also places directly around, say, Interstate 95 or right near the intercoastal are known for having major flooding issues. Luckily, Boca is an older city, so a lot of these flood levels have already been assessed. So when you go to the public record to look at the individual home's flood zone, you can see how much of a pooling. Well, for one, you see if your home is in a flood zone. Number 2, you can actually see how much flooding could you actually expect from that home. So it's not uncommon to see homes, say, around Old Floresta or some other communities that are kind of around the town center, around that Interstate 95 area. They'll say like AH with 1 to 3 feet of pooling water. So just take that in consideration, get a measuring tape out, put it about 3 feet, and see if you're okay with 3 feet of water being in your home. That could be all new electrical that needs to be installed, all your furniture is destroyed, a lot of drywall, probably mold issues, and other things of that nature. So it's really great if you do find a home and it's slightly in a flood zone and you want to evaluate the risk, look at where the baseline level is for the property and see if there's any type of elevation for that particular property as well. Also take consideration, just because a neighborhood is not in a flood zone, individual properties could be in a flood zone themselves because they're lower lying compared to the other properties. Also, in areas such as the Golden Triangle, in some parts of Old Floresta, they're actually building new construction homes. And as you build a newer home, a lot of times they build up the home's elevation itself and cause runoff of water into the properties that surround the area. So even though you're not in a flood zone right now, or your house didn't flood previously, due to all the new construction in certain communities, the next major flood event. So you can look at a flood map. What else can you do to see if your home has ever had flood damage? Well, if you're working with an experienced insurance agent, they can possibly look up the previous claims of the property to see if has there ever been a flood claim on the property, to see if your home has ever flooded. Before you close on the property during the inspection period, you can find out a lot of information about the property itself. And number 3 is that if you're in a flood zone or you're worried about your home flooding, you can get flood insurance. It's relatively cheap for the coverage you get. It's about $700 a month in Palm Beach County for most homes. Now, if you have any type of citizens insurance, most likely in a few years, you're going to be forced to get flood insurance regardless if you're in a flood zone or not. So take that in consideration. But I've personally known people who had to do claims against flood insurance, and it can take over a year to get your property fixed or get the funds to actually fix your property. So just because you have insurance does not mean it's going to be easy once your house gets flooded. And you need to take into consideration before you start submitting offers on a property. Are you okay with that risk? You say once in every 20 years or so, you may have a flood claim in the property with some type of damage. And if all else fails, one thing I've definitely realized, you can easily just go to the neighbors, knock on their doors, and just ask them like, hey, I'm planning on buying a property in this area. I would love to find out more information. Like, has this neighborhood ever flooded? Has your street ever flooded? Has any parts of the neighborhood ever flooded? Where does it flood? And what I found out, people actually love to talk. So you just ask them a question, most likely they'll love to actually just let you know, like, yeah, so-and-so's house on the street, that thing floods every major hurricane. And if you're the person buying so-and-so's house down the street, you need to know that. So it's great just to walk around the neighborhood. I can do that for you. If here's my contact information below. I've done that before where I just, friendly just go in the door like, hey, I got some clients moving in. Can you tell me more about the neighborhood? Has it flooded? And again, people love to talk. Just ask them a question and they love to help. Now, it's not just the home that floods. If you have a commute that you have to rely on, it's also good to know what roads flood here in Boca Raton. So I'm gonna put up some B-roll. I'm gonna put some footage up here of some particular areas such as Clipmore Road is known to have major flooding issues that leaves cars stranding during major flooding events. And in Clipmore Road, it will flood, but it tends to go down within a few hours. So it's not something that's gonna be flooded for days like you will have in some Southwest Florida locations. Another place that's known to flood is out there in the swamps where they built out the West Boca. So 441 in Glades. There's a lot of incidents during heavy rains events here in Boca Raton that area has drastically flooded. Again, it's good to know. Stay safe. If you don't know how deep the water is, please don't drive in it. And then lastly, the areas that flood is going to be around Federal Highway. So right now, I'm kind of close to Meisner Park. I'm in the downtown area. And the road that's right along the intercoastal called Federal Highway, that main road there and all the little fingers that go out into the intercoastal, those roads drastically flood even during, just thunderstorms here in Boca Raton. So it's good to know that as well. Because again, just because your home doesn't flood, the path you have to take away from your home, it's just good to know in general so you don't destroy a car and have to deal with getting a new car and flood damage in there. Now, number 3, and this is going to be the final thing, but it's actually very important. People don't understand the difference in Boca Raton itself. There's going to be 3 parts, and you need to determine kind of quickly about what type of area you want to be in, because if you just go on search at Boca Raton, it's going to take you from the ocean all the way down to the Everglades. And even though this is one like technical area, the Boca Raton city limits feels drastically different than other parts of Boca Raton. So just to put things in perspective, so from the coast on the east where the beaches are, the intercoastal, kind of up to where Military Road is, that's going to be considered kind of like East Boca. Most homes in here that if you buy into, they're going to be about 5 to 10 minutes away from the beach. So very easy access to the coast if needed for boating, a lot of activities in downtown. It's just very easy to get to anything that you're going to be doing here in Boca Raton, lifestyle, leisure-wise. You're very close to the shops at the Royal Palm Plaza. A lot of great restaurants are located here. Again, top A-rated schools. But if you are going to be sending your kids to like Pinecrest, North Broward, a lot of these other private schools, or if you have to use the Florida Turnpike to get to where you have to work at, say in Miami for finance or other jobs you have in West, just in case you have to use the Florida Turnpike to get anywhere, you're very far away from the Florida Turnpike. Also, you're kind of away from anything kind of in the West Boca. If you have to go that way, it's something to take in consideration. Also, this East Boca area is known for an evacuation zone. So if we do have a major storm coming, such as a major hurricane, you are going to be required to evacuate. So something good to know, if you're kind of to the right of I-95, this is an active evacuation zone, and here's the maps just so you can see a good portion of East Boca has to evacuate. Now next, for the middle part, you have Central Boca, and this is going to be everything kind of towards the I-95 all the way to the Florida Turnpike. A lot of these communities are slightly newer than the ones you get in East Boca. You're right in the middle between I-95 and the Florida Turnpike. Then the I-95, so the Florida Turnpike is easier to travel on, especially if you have to travel, say, to Miami for work, say, for finance or something in that nature. The Florida Turnpike is a lot easier than I-95. I-95 has constantly been rated one of the most dangerous roads here in South Florida. And as you go further south, I-95 becomes drastically more dangerous, it feels like, to me. Again, Central Boca, you have a lot of the top rated schools that are very desirable. If you're going the private school route, that's where you're going to find Pinecrest, that's where you're going to find St. Andrews, you're going to find North Broward Prep. A lot of great schools are there. And you have the Town Center Mall, the most desirable mall in entire Palm Beach County, and Sugar Sand Parks as well. And finally, in between all that, you have West Boca, the furthest out into the swamp area, and also known to not be part of the city limits of Boca Raton, so you don't get the regular beach passes that you would, say, if you lived in Central or East Boca, so you can't enjoy all of Boca's activities. And if you didn't know by now, Boca Raton is known for a very luxurious resort-style living. A lot of spas are located here, golf courses, a lot of amenities for the residents of Boca Raton, and everything is a nice open green space. A lot of beautifications happen in our city limits and in Central Boca. But once you get to West Boca, things change drastically. It's going to feel more like a very nice suburb in Florida. Again, the schools are A-rated, but you're going to get a lot more of the bigger box stores. It's going to have the Walmarts, the Home Depot, the Best Buy, and those type stores there. It's not going to be as upscaled. Again, the vibe itself is different in West Boca than compared to Central and East Boca. So something to definitely be aware of. And again, as I mentioned, people in Boca love to ask where you live, and there's definitely a sense of prestige to be considered in East Boca or Central Boca compared to, say, West Boca. And you rarely see people from West Boca and East Boca somehow hanging out together. The people I see hanging around, say, in the golf course, tennis courts, a lot of times they kind of stick together in their own communities. I feel like East Central Boca kind of sticks together and West Boca sticks together with its own community, its own parks. Again, out there in West Boca, unfortunately, you're more into the swamps, so you're probably going to see a lot more fun wildlife, and you're going to have possibly more mosquitoes, less of a breeze. So it's going to be a difference there, but your homes out there in West Boca are going to be much newer, and you're going to have much larger homes out there as well. So overall, we have the top 3 things that generally needs to be discussed before you even start considering buying a house here in Boca. We have the HOAs. Are you pro HOA or against the HOA, or you just don't care? Number 2 is going to be flood zone, because we're in Florida, we're in a hurricane prone area, and you need to know how comfortable you are with being in a flood zone or not. And number 3 is what type of lifestyle and quality of life you want to enjoy, and what type of community you want to be part of. Do you want to be in the East, Central, or West Boca? Again, they're going to be drastically different. So when you come down here, definitely drive through the areas, get a feel of everything, and determine what type of quality of life and what you value in your area. Are you okay with a 30-minute drive to the beach from West Boca? Or you feel better with, say, a 10-minute drive from Central Boca, or a 5-minute drive from East Boca? Or beaches don't matter to you at all, and then you have to figure out what else you would like in the area itself. So if you have any more questions or concerns about moving to Boca, please shoot me a text, send me an email, because I got your back when you're considering moving here with your family into the beautiful city of Boca Raton. Until next time, take care.